So this is how humanity's position becomes destabilized, becomes challenged, and so was England's colonial position as well. So that is a political critique of England as colonial superpower, and that is a philosophical critique of Renaissance being the definition of the human position in the universe. So that's how Gulliver's Travels destabilized the position of both British confidence and the Renaissance confidence that human beings had during the late 16th century England, particularly during the Elizabethan times. So that so it may be a way of destabilizing humanity's position at the center of the universe by demonstrating that size, power, and significance are all relative. Although the Lilliputians are almost pitifully small in Gulliver's eyes, they are unwilling to see themselves that way. Rather, they think themselves as normal and of Gulliver as a freakish giant. একদিকে গালিবার বলতে পারে, "এই বাবা লিলিপুটটা কি ছোট?" এরকম লিলিপুটরাও তো বলতে পারে, "এই বাবা, এই একটা লোক কত লম্বা, কত বড়।" তো কে যে নরমাল সেটা সম্পূর্ণরূপে আপেক্ষিক, রিলেটিভ। ঠিক আছে? গালিভার্স might say that this is the land of Lilliputians. And the Lilliputians say, okay, we are normal people, giant has popped up into our land. So who is normal is a relative and almost politically majoritarian. That Gulliver may himself be the Lilliputian to some other nation's Englishman. যে গালিভার যেরকম এখানে প্রিভিলেজ এনজয় করছে, সেরকম অনেক জায়গায় যেতে পারে যেখানে সে লিলিপুট হয়ে যেতে পারে, হলেও তাই বুকটিতে। A notion elaborated fully in book. So what is say that Gulliver may himself be the Lilliputian to some other nation's Englishman. A notion elaborated fully in part 2, or should I say in book 2, is already implied in the first chapter. The literary genre through which Gulliver's Travels can be explained is the genre of travelogue. So travel literature, and you know very well why travel literature became so popular during that time, uh, because of increasing
classical pressure.
because of Renaissance tendencies to push the world, and then that pushing the world for knowledge becomes a reason for pushing the world for business, and that নলেজের জন্য পুশ করার কারণটা যখন ব্যবসার জন্য পুশ করা হয়ে গেল, তখনই রেনেসা থেকে নিও ক্লাসিক্যাল এজের ট্রান্সফরমেশন ঘটে, এবং স্বাভাবিকভাবে philosophy gave way to businessmen, romance gave way to realism, and philosophy and romance gave way to practical common sense. So now we know why 18th century is dominated by business, by middle class, by realism, by common sense, and everything. And the traveler. Overall, as a result, almost traveling became a part of their political identity. Almost traveling became a part of the political identity of West European nations. And a travelogue is usually a single person's account of a trip, journey, or otherwise. We have numerous famous travelogues written by some of the European explorers. A few contemporary critics go to some lengths to read Gulliver's Travels primarily as parody of travel narratives. Like, this is interesting. This is actually very interesting. I'll come back to this parody part. I'll come back to Gulliver's Travels being the parody of typical travel narratives. But particularly the typical travel narrative like Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. I'll come back to this. A few contemporary critics go to some lengths to read Gulliver's Travels primarily as parody of travel narratives like Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. Gulliver stands at the center of 18th century debates of travel and discovery. Further, Gulliver undergoes his journey with utopian expectation of spreading English ideology only to be disappointed. Now, we need to understand a couple of reasons why Gulliver's Travels is a parody of typical narrative and why Gulliver was disappointed. Now let me explain them one by one. Okay. Now, if you see Gulliver's Travels is not a typical travel narrative. So often, and it makes fun of the traveler. The very few travel narrative we have, which actually makes fun of the travelers. So is Gulliver writing a travel narrative or is Gulliver writing a parody of the travel narrative? That needs to be sorted out first. So there are critics. There are critics who believe that Gulliver's Travels is making fun of Gulliver's Travels is making fun of the way travel narrative is composed. সাধারণত ট্রাভেল ন্যারেটিভ যেভাবে লেখা হয় সেই ব্যাপার স্যাপারগুলোকেই নিয়ে মজা ঠাট্টা করছেন সেজন্য উনি এমন একটা লেমুয়েল গ্যালিভারকে বানিয়েছেন যেটা এমন এমন জায়গায় যাচ্ছে যেখানে গিয়ে একটা দৈত্য হয়ে যাচ্ছে যেখানে গিয়ে একটা পিউনি ক্রিচার হয়ে যাচ্ছে বিভিন্ন জায়গায় গিয়ে বিভিন্ন রকমের হয়ে যাচ্ছে সো 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 হি হ্যাজ টেকেন and the agency of Lemuel Gulliver. He has taken away the agency of Lemuel Gulliver. And when he has taken away the agency of, or the individuality or the agency of Lemuel Gulliver, Gulliver becomes a god. And no wonder his name is Gulliver, as I had explained already in my previous lecture, in the phase 1 lecture of Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. So what is happening over here, that in Gulliver's Travels, something happened in Gulliver's Travels. What is happening here? In Gulliver's Travels, Gulliver is never allowed to hold on to his dignity. And every time he is presented, either he is presented as a girl, or as a stupid, or as an embarrassment, or as a sight of ridicule, or something of the other. And that makes me wonder whether Gulliver's Travels is at all a travel narrative or is actually a dig or a parody or a spoof on the travel narrative. তখন এত বেশি ট্রাভেল ন্যারেটিভ লেখা হচ্ছিল যে ট্রাভেল ন্যারেটিভের ওপরেই এটা একটা প্যারোডি হতে পারে সো দ্যাট বেগস আস the question that Gulliver's Travels should be analyzed as as not necessarily as a travel narrative, not so much a travel narrative as much as a parody of it. So this is one part that is getting sorted out. The second part of the discussion is that we can think of Gulliver's Travels as, apart from it as a travel narrative, we can think of it as a kind of a disillusionment, a kind of a disillusionment of British aspirations. And why? Because the British went far and wide across the Atlas to spread their knowledge, to spread their culture, to spread their ideologies, to spread everything that they had amongst people. Right? Amongst people. Now, when Gulliver discovered that most of the lands that he is confronted with are not interested in learning anything that Gulliver's land promises to deliver or promises to boast of, then suddenly it also ridicules the British aspiration of spreading British culture and British knowledge across the world. So in that sense, because during the traveling and colonial days, England exported Mark my word carefully. England exported its culture and imported commodities. I have to pick up the theoretical paradigm of this lecture because during that period, the British exported their literature, their culture, their aspirations, their ambitions, and everything, and they imported the goods and commodities. ইংল্যান্ড সর্বত্র কি করেছে? নিজের সংস্কৃতিকে রপ্তানি করেছে, আর মাল মশলা যা ছিল সব আমদানি করেছে। So that was a kind of a strategy that so English colonization is actually a kind of an exchange between English culture and the Oriental exotic commodities. So this is how it worked, and that's why Swift is making fun of that colonial paradigm as well, because when Gulliver wanted to tell the whereabouts of his land, the culture and the ideology of his land, I mean, there is no taker of that ideology. There is no buyer of the ideology. There is no exchanger of the ideology. So in that front, the British cultural aspirations is also suffering a major setback during the various books of Jonathan Swift's illustrations. So that's how it says Gulliver undergoes his journeys with utopian expectations by spreading English ideology, only to be disappointed. Swift's life experience indicates he never traveled beyond Europe. কিন্তু আসল কথা হলো সুইফট ইউরোপের বাইরে, ইউরোপিয়ান মহাদেশের বাইরে কোথাও হয়তো কোনোদিন ট্রাভেলই করেনি। So that drives home the point that I have been trying to put across. And Swift's life experience indicates he never traveled beyond Europe. And the texts he wrote during that period, like the Drapier's letters and a modest proposal. You know what Drapier's letters? Drapier's letters is a collection of 7 pamphlets that Jonathan Swift wrote as a dean of a church to protest against British imposition on Ireland, on Dublin. Modest proposal. So Swift has always been a kind of a critic of English establishment, English colonization, and English imposition. And no wonder he was rooting for the Irish culture in Drapier's letters. So although the British government and in collaboration with the British government, the Irish government protested against the Drapier's letters, but the popular sentiment of Ireland supported Swift's perspective in Drapier's letters, and Swift actually took the pseudonym of Mr. Drapier in the Drapier's letter because of obvious retaliation against him. Period like the Drapier's letter, a modest proposal, revolved more around questions of British politics than around world travel. Moreover, several critics, including Carol Fabricant and J. Paul Hunter, have identified the text itself as a multi-genre. মানে গালিভার ট্রাভেলসকে তুমি ট্রাভেল লগ বলে ছেড়ে দিলে সেটাও সম্পূর্ণ হবে না, ওটাকে ডিস্টোপিয়া বলে ছেড়ে দিলে সেটাও সম্পূর্ণ হবে না, মোরাল ফেবল বললে সেটাও সম্পূর্ণ হবে না, পলিটিক্যাল অ্যালিগরি বললে সেটাও আবার সম্পূর্ণ হবে না। So obviously there is difficulty in terms of categorizing the genre of Gulliver's Travels, but we can actually negotiate this generic difficulty of generic identification of Gulliver's Travels. How? By way of understanding it as a multi-genre. দরকার কি এটা কোনো একটা বিশেষ জনের কাজ হিসেবে এটাকে ক্যাটাগরাইজ করার দরকারও তো নেই, প্রয়োজনীয়তাও নেই। So that's why Carol Fabricant and a very important prominent critic of the time, J. Paul Hunter, have identified the text itself as a multi-genre work. Consequently, Gulliver's Travels, political and historical aspects should be evaluated at least equally with its travel aspects. J. Paul Hunter opens this door by using reader response theory to expand the categorization of travels. I'll explain reader response theory in my lecture on literary theory and criticism. So I'm not getting into the literary criticism in my lecture in Gulliver's Travels. So by using reader response theory to expand the categorization of travels to encompass biography, travel narratives, and historical narratives. Gulliver's Travels comprises Gulliver's Travels comprises four different books, each detailing accounts from a different voyage undertaken by the putative author. Putative means that Gulliver Lemuel Gulliver, published anonymously by Swift. এই ছদ্মনামে অ্যানোনিমাস পাবলিকেশনগুলো খুব ইম্পর্টেন্ট বিকজ it was not safe for Jonathan Swift to publish Gulliver's Travels or The Tale of the Dark or particularly the Drapier's Letters in his original name because obviously there would be tremendous retaliation against such satirical publication in Swift's time. So Swift could not have afforded to publish uh, most of these satirical works in his own name. So he had to adopt one pseudonym or the other. For example, Drapier is the pseudonym of Jonathan Swift for those seven pamphlets called Drapier's Letters. And Gulliver's Travels comprises four different books, each detailing accounts from a different voyage undertaken by the putative author Lemuel Gulliver. Okay, he's called putative. He's called putative because he he usually gets gulped by Swift. So the gullibility of Lemuel Gulliver leaves him putative, leaves him almost embarrassingly putative. So, so, so obviously, the Gulliver's Travels comprises four different books, each detailing accounts from a different voyages undertaken by the putative author Lemuel Gulliver, published anonymously by Swift. It was ostensibly just another travelogue describing the new territories emerging as a result of progress made in technology and commerce. Swift helps establish these views by describing the author as Lemuel Gulliver, first a surgeon and then a captain of many ships. He provides a fictional biography of Gulliver in the prefatory dedication and provides maps of the territories discussed. Actually, why is Swift doing this? I'm telling you. Swift is doing this to give novel semblance of realism about it. Okay. Swift, why is Swift doing this? Swift is doing this to give the novel a degree of or a semblance of realism about it. খুবই কি দরকার রিয়েলিজমের ডিগ্রিটা দেওয়া? হ্যাঁ, দেওয়াটা দরকার because novel is depending or novel should I say is extremely dependent on realism, on middle class bourgeois ethos. So the practical, commonsensical details are relevant to authenticate novel's realism. Because if we cannot authenticate, if the author fails to authenticate a degree of realism to the novel, then the novel ceases to be a novel in the first place. তাহলে নোবেল হতে গেলে কি রিয়েলিজম থাকতেই হবে? হ্যাঁ, থাকতেই হবে। এবং সেই জন্যই আমি বারবারই বলি that there is a theoretical should I say complicity or there is a theoretical correspondence between the genre of novel writing and the theory of realism, and there is also a complicity, a correspondence between romance, aristocracy, and the forms of literature that emerged during the time, particularly sonnet. And that's why I keep saying that sonnets are very strict in structure, and, the feudal order is very strict in structure. So the 18th century is fluid, the market is fluid. So the inflexible, rigid form of literature are also started breaking down into pieces. So we no longer have the rigid, inflexible structure of sonnet like we used to have in feudal aristocratic times back in the days of Elizabeth in late 16th century. So it is only when Gulliver is shipwrecked, it is only when Gulliver is shipwrecked and awakens, it's only when Gulliver is shipwrecked and awakens on a beach with arms and legs strongly fastened on each side to the ground, captured by creatures not 6 inches high, that the reader begins to question the veracity, the authenticity of the account. লেখকের মনে একটা খটকা লেগে গেল, এত বড় একটা দত্ত ওইটুকু ছোট ছোট পুচকিগুলোর দ্বারা নিজেকে অ্যালাউ করলো কেন টাইট হতে দিতে? ও দড়িগুলোকে ছিঁড়ে খুলে ফেলে দিলে ইচ্ছা করলেই তো পারতো, কিন্তু সেটা করবে না। কেন করবে না? তাহলে কি এর মধ্যে আদৌ কি রিয়েলিজম আছে? না, রিয়েলিস্টিক অথেন্টিসিটিটা এখানে পাঠকের কাছে কোশ্চেনেবল হয়ে গেল। সেজন্যই বলা হচ্ছে ইট ইজ অনলি when Gulliver is shipwrecked and awakens on a beach with arms and legs strongly fastened on each side to the ground. ঠিক আছে, ছোট ছোট ওরা আমাকে বেঁধে রেখেছে, but had Gulliver wanted, he could so easily have broken the shackles willingly. বাট ও ওগুলো ভাঙেনি বা ওদের বাঁধনগুলো খোলেনি, কিন্তু ওটা খুলতে চাইনি। এইখানেই এই যে খুলতে পারেনি তাদের বাঁধনগুলো, ওই এক একটা ফিঙ্গারের সাইজের লোকে, এই জায়গাটাই মানে পাঠককে যে নোভেলের যে রিয়েলিজম সেই জায়গায় রেশনালি ইন্টারোগেট করাচ্ছে। So, it is only when Gulliver is shipwrecked and awakens on a beach with arms and legs strongly fastened on each side to the ground, captured the creatures not 6 inches high, that the reader begins to question, reader begins to interrogate the veracity of the account, the authenticity of this, the realism of this account. This is, of course, a description of Gulliver's encounter with the Lilliputians, a race of people no larger than his middle finger. আঙুলের থেকেও বড় না, এক একটা আঙুলের সমান হয়তো বড় জোর মেরে কেটে হবে। Gulliver is completely befuddled at the end of the novel. Gulliver is completely befuddled at the end of the novel. He believes that the travels are a defense of himself, showing how morally he acted. মানে সে গ্যালিভার এটা পরবর্তীকালে সেলফ ডিফেন্সে বলতে পারে, আমি ওই ছোট ছোট পুচকি লোকগুলোকে আমার ওই বিরাট দত্তাকৃতির চেহারা দিয়ে মারতে চাইনি, বিকজ আমি কিছু করলে অনেকে ওরা মরে যেতে পারত। সো মেবি হি কুড ডিফেন্ড হিমসেলফ by saying that he acted extremely morally. So ethical, moral গ্রাউন্ডে আমি যেগুলো প্রোডাক্ট করেছিলাম, had I acted otherwise, it would have become unethical or immoral on my behalf. So that's why I have lectured that he believes that the travels are a defense of himself and showing how morally he acted. Yes, how morally he acted, and that's why he didn't do what he could have or what he probably should have, but he didn't because of his ethics, because of his morality. So, in truth, the travels are the best evidence one could have that Gulliver often acted very ridiculous. But যে কাজগুলো গ্যালিভার করেছিল সেইগুলো যতটা না বেশি এথিক্যালি এবং মোরালি গ্যালিভারকে ডিফেন্ড করে, তার থেকে বেশি রিডিকিউলাসলি এম্বারাস করে গ্যালিভারকে। এখানেই কিন্তু লেমুয়েল গ্যালিভার becomes a kind of a non-dignified gull. So he may defend himself that I acted morally and ethically, but his action exposed him as a site of embarrassment and an object of ridicule. And this is where he slips into the gullibility of Swift, and he imagines one type of audience, and Swift created for another. Very interesting. Very interesting. He created one type of audience. He created one type of audience, and one Swift created another. So Gulliver thinks that his audiences are stupid, silly. If I say that I acted morally, they would buy the theory. I acted morally, you would believe in the theory. But the thing is that no, you didn't act morally. You didn't act ethically. Actually, you acted ridiculously. You didn't act morally, you didn't act ethically. I'm telling you what you acted. You acted ridiculously. তুমি মোরালিও অ্যাক্ট করোনি, এথিক্যালিও অ্যাক্ট করোনি, তুমি রিডিকিউলাসলি অ্যাক্ট করেছো, যেটা দেখে সবারই হাসি পাচ্ছে, এম্বারাসড হচ্ছে, আর তুমি নিজেকে সেলফ এম্বারাসমেন্ট আর হ্যারাসমেন্টের একটা এক্সাম্পল হিসেবে দাঁড় করিয়েছো বারবার। And the more you behaved ethically and 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 should I say morally, the more ridiculous you kept becoming. And no wonder he is Jonathan Swift's gull, and he is Gulliver. So so at every stage, yes, and you need to understand this. He imagines one type of audience. He imagines one type of audience, and Swift created for another. So if you think carefully that what kind of audience does Gulliver create, and what kind of audience does Swift create? Gulliver creates a kind of audience that is dull, that is unintelligent, and if I say I acted morally, they would buy the theory. But Swift's audience, Swift's readers are rational, intelligent, and incredibly, let me use that word, skeptical. So they would read Gulliver's Travels extremely skeptically, extremely skeptically. And that is why, or that is how Jonathan Swift has created separate kind of audience that probably Lemuel Gulliver thought them to be. And that's why, again, I repeat, he becomes Swift's gull, Swift's Gulliver. Yes. At every stage of Gulliver's travels, the fantastic elements are subservient to Swift stories, satire, and critical thinking. কিন্তু একটা দিক থেকে দেখতে গেলে যতই ফ্যান্টাস্টিক, যতই এক্সট্রাঅর্ডিনারি, যতই অ্যামেজিং, আনরিয়েলিস্টিক সেটিং গুলো আনুক না কেন, তা স্যাটায়ারের কাছে কিন্তু সেগুলো নগণ্য। কেননা সুইফটের মূল উদ্দেশ্য হলো স্যাটায়ার, and if the fantasy comes, if the fantastical figment of imagination comes, they continue to remain subservient to the satirical purpose of neoclassical Jonathan Swift. Swift is hardly an exception in this regard. Almost from the birth of storytelling, works of imaginative fiction have served as powerful platforms for social commentary. This was true of Ovid and Homer, Apuleius and Rabelais, H.G. Wells and Olaf, Aldous Huxley and George Orwell, Margaret Atwood and Robert Heinlein, all the way to the present day, when science fiction and fantasy themes have taken over a host of mainstream, highbrow literary works. Gulliver's Travels is an important lineage as well. Gulliver's. So this is our concluding sentence. This is our concluding sentence. Gulliver's gullibility played into the hands of Swift's narrative. Gulliver's gullibility. Look, if you see that word, the gull, there is a gull in Gulliver, and there is a gull in gullibility, and both the gulls are corresponding to each other. Both the gulls are reciprocating each other. One girl complements the other, one girl supplements the other. So the gull in Gulliver and the gull in gullibility, they are corresponding to each other. Gulliver's gullibility played into the hands of Swift's narrative. When we analyze that Gulliver's Travels, that there is a gull in Gulliver, there is a gull in gullibility. So the Gulliver's gull is gullible because he plays right into the skeptical hands of Genesis. You have 5 minutes. You may ask, do you have any interrogations, any confirmation, any questions? Please go ahead. If you have any question, if you have any doubt, if you have any challenges, please fire away. Since there are no responses, so I presume that there are no questions, there are no challenges, and there are no doubts.